Hello and welcome back to the Sales Director Podcast, the weekly show that gives your business sales director level insight and strategy every single week. I'm Jerry and I'm your host, and let's get into it. So, last week we talked about some of the most expensive mistakes you can make in sales. And these are the ones that businesses fall into when they realize that they might have a sales problem. But this week, let's go back a step and really delve into that realization itself. How do you actually know whether your business has a problem with sales in the first place? Because this is actually quite tricky. Most sales problems don't announce themselves. They're not plainly obvious straight away. They kind of hide, if you like, often behind numbers that look sometimes perfectly healthy. And then suddenly it's too late to actually fix anything really easily. And whether you're doing the selling yourself or you've got a small team, the signs are generally mostly the same. And so what I'm going to do today is going to flag a few things that you might want to look at in your own business to assess whether you've got a problem with sales. But remember what I said with episode 1. If you're even listening to this episode, it's likely that you've got a bit of a gut feeling that sales might be wrong. And, as much as I'm going to give you a few concrete things today, I'd also say listen to that gut feeling. So do listen to the whole episode and take the pointers that I give you on it, and then go away and have a bit of an investigation. So, three sort of signs or three broad topics that could tell you that you've got a problem with sales. So, first of all, sign one is basically you're standing still. And what I mean by that is that your revenue doesn't really change year on year, or it stays roughly the same. There's no significant growth, but maybe there's not significant reduction as well. And something I think you need to remember in sales, that basically if you're standing still, you're going backwards. And this is kind of the most obvious one that people miss. You'd think that people would look at their turnover year on year and kind of notice that they're not really making any turnover growth each year. But interestingly, a lot of people don't seem to notice it, or actually assume it means something that it doesn't. And what people often assume it means is that the business is stable. But if you're flat, you're not actually stable. And you have to remember that with inflation, with churn, if you've got an employee base with increasing national insurance, with increasing NI, if your sales or your top line turnover figure is standing still, every year you're basically making less profit. And that's not a good position for any business to be in. The deeper trap with this, though, is that you might be noticing it's not really changing year on year, but not really getting worried about that, believing that you're stable. But actually, you're looking at the wrong number in some ways, because revenue itself is actually a lag indicator. So what it really does is it tells you about the past. So if you're looking at the end of, say, 2026, and you're looking at 2026's sales performance, and you've made £500,000, all you're really looking at is the activity that was done in 2026 and potentially activity that was done in 2024 and 2025, depending on your lead to sale time. And what healthy businesses do actually instead is they look at their lead indicators. So they look at things like new inquiries, new proposals sent, new deals opened, conversion rates. What they actually look at is the activity that predicts the future. And this is the same whether you're a solo operator, or whether you've got a team underneath you, or whether you're maybe not a solo but you're on the smaller end and you don't have a sales team. So essentially, assuming that you're stable because your revenue is roughly the same year on year on year is actually problematic for two reasons. One, because with each year, costs go up. So essentially, you're going to be making making less profit every single year. But also, it's not really a good assessment of how well your sales are performing, because you're looking at the wrong figure. You're looking at a figure that tells you the past rather than a figure that tells you the future. And if you look at figures that, look at measurements that tell you the future, if you do see a problem there, you can far quicker act on it than looking at a figure that tells you in the past. So essentially with this one, start looking at things from now. Start looking at, monthly deals created, look at monthly sales activity, look at monthly conversion rates, because that will give you a proactive way to actually address any sales problems that you've got. But by and large, though, if your revenue is staying the same year on year on year, so you can go through Xero, you can go through QuickBooks, go through Sage, and just look at your turnover figure year on year on year. If it's barely changed, then basically you're standing still, and that to me suggests, more than anything, even though it is a lag indicator, that you've got a sales problem that you probably want to be addressing. Now, the other sign, and we touched on this in the last episode, is all about your pipeline and your forecast. And the next sign is realizing ultimately that your pipeline is lying to you. So what I mean by that is that your pipeline to you looks really healthy, but actually at the end of it, it's maybe telling you the wrong information. So what do I mean by that? So first of all, new business should have its own pipeline. What a lot of businesses have is new business and renewing businesses all in the same pipeline. So that's great. If your pipeline, let's say, is £1 million, okay? But actually, of that £1 million, 990,000 of that is actually renewing business, and only 10,000 of it is brand new business, then that's a sales problem, because that would mean that your new business isn't even going to take to cover the churn that you're going to get every year, because not every little bit of that renewing business is actually going to renew. So combining pipelines, I can understand why people do it, but actually it's really the wrong methodology, because basically it means you've got a pipeline that's lying to you. So I would look at your pipeline and just check that your pipeline is only for new business, for your business, and only for new business. Ideally, let's say you've got a US team and a UK team. The UK team and the US team should have their own pipelines, so that you can assess the strength of each team. I'll do a different episode on that. That's not a topic for today. The other thing, if you've got a sales team, you might want to quiz your sellers on their pipeline. So if they take you through each deal and it's really clear that they're being really vague, and they've got a pile of maybes in there, and they're thinking that deals are going to close, but they've not got anything concrete that's actually telling them that it's going to close. It's just basically vibes, if you like. Then that also tells you that your pipeline is lying to you. But in this case, it's lying to the seller. But if you do any sort of forecasting from your pipeline, then actually you want definitive deals in that pipeline that the sellers are controlling. And then the last danger, and the last thing you might want to look at to figure out whether your pipeline is lying to you, is your pipeline might look really healthy. So let's assume it doesn't have any renewing business in there, and let's assume that all the deals in there are fully qualified, fully controlled, and fully managed by your sellers. And your pipeline in this case might be £1 million, and your target might only be £300,000. So that's great. That's a really healthy pipeline for a sales target of £300,000. But when you look at your pipeline, it's only made up of two deals, both worth a value of £500,000. Unfortunately, that is a weak pipeline, because the likelihood of both of those deals closing is quite small. And actually, if it's only two deals, the likelihood of any of them closing is actually quite small. And that's where the pipeline coverage figure can be a little bit. You have to put some common sense behind it. And what I prefer to see is a mixture of business. So I call it bread and butter business, and I also call it the sort of the higher ticket business, if you like. So what I like to see is bread and butter business that doesn't take much administration, is easy to close, has a short lead to sale time, and basically keeps the business moving forwards whilst you're chasing the bigger deals. And that to me makes a healthy pipeline, because you've got a variety of different business. Essentially, it means that all of your eggs aren't in one basket. And if you've got a pipeline with just two deals of £500,000, totaling £1 million, all of your eggs are basically in one basket. I know it's technically two baskets, but actually all of your eggs are in one basket, and that's a really risky position to be. But even in that scenario, your pipeline is still telling you good figures, so therefore your pipeline is lying to you. So ultimately, the second sign that you want to look for is ultimately, is my pipeline lying to me? Are there a load of deals in there that are really, really weak? Have I got my renewals in there, or is my pipeline based upon maybe a couple of really big deals? And you've maybe been looking at the top line figure going, oh, great, there's £1 million in my pipeline, but actually looking into it, that's made up from maybe only one or two deals. That suggests that you've actually got a sales problem. Now, what that sales problem is needs to then be diagnosed by looking at various different aspects of your pipeline. I'll probably do a different episode on that at the moment, but feel free to reach out and contact me if you do want any further clarification on that as well. Um, Now, the last sign that you might have a sales problem, I've kind of largely grouped it into the concept of order takers versus sellers. Okay. Um, uh, or the business being an order taking business rather than a sales driven business. So, the way to sort of assess this is certainly if you're a B2B, then if the majority of your new business is inbound only, so what I mean by that is that the business is coming to you, whether they're coming to you from referrals or they're coming to you via your website, etc. If that's only coming to you via inbound, don't get me wrong, that's great, but it does mean that you're an order taker because basically somebody's coming to you with a requirement. It's much easier for you to then turn that around into a bit of business, and quite often all it really involves is sending a price or a product overview, depending on the type of business that you are. That means that your business is an order taking business, and that's a really risky position to be in because overnight inbound leads can dry up, and apart from anything else, they're not really predictable. So inbound leads aren't predictable, and therefore they're not very good to do a forecast from. Um, um, and you can tell this. You can look at this. You'll know yourself if the majority of your business is inbound, but have a look at kind of the activity that you're doing. How much of your business did you actually create yourself, or did your sales team create yourself? And that will let you know whether the majority of your business is coming via inbound channels. But if it's mainly coming from inbound or from referrals or from word of mouth, do you know what? I actually get a lot of businesses very proudly tell me, oh, all of my business is word of mouth. And I just sort of think to myself, it's great that you're cocky there, but my God, is your business in a risky position because literally that tap could turn off overnight. And actually, that's how a lot of clients engage me. They used to get tons and tons of inbound business. Suddenly it dried up, and then they're like, oh no, what am I going to do? And that inbound tap does turn off, unfortunately. So you can't rely on it for the long term. Um, Now, what often happens in this scenario, especially if you're in an order taking business, and is that your deals are quite often won on price more than anything else. And what this means is heavily discounting. Now, I was chatting to a friend of mine over the weekend. I'm not going to name the company that he's used, but he's getting an awning fitted over his patio. And before anything had even been done, now to be fair, he's going with this company, but I'm going to tell you why it's a stupid thing. Um, before he'd even, before the sale, before the meeting had even been done, the guy had already discounted his price like 5 times. And to me, that's a really sleazy way of selling, if I'm honest. Because if they're discounting like that, I'd be like, well, why didn't you offer me at that price anyway? But I think the funniest thing about this story is that my friend had already decided he was going to appoint this company. And the reason for that was basically his friend had an awning from the same company. And so, that was strong. The seller never actually found that out. But so he'd already decided he was going to appoint this company. And then lo and behold, last week he got an email in his inbox telling them that the seller was going to discount it by another £700. Now, my friend had already made a decision. They were going to get that business at the rate that they'd quoted, which, to be fair, had already been discounted 5 times. But that's an order taking business. And basically, they've lost significant margin. I mean, they've lost £700. Apart from all the other discounts you offered out, they've lost £700 on that deal that they didn't need to lose because the decision had already been made. Now, if you're that type of business, frankly, you've got a sales problem. And actually, if you're an awning company and you're concerned that this might be your seller, reach out because I can help you. I can help you make deals at the full margin. But if you're winning all of your deals on price and you're finding you're having to discount really heavily, that means you've got a sales problem, I'm afraid. Now, discounting feels like winning, but it's not. It's really not. You shouldn't have to discount. Don't get me wrong. Discounts can be useful. If you've got a new product launch or if it's like a summer sale or you're trying to get rid of stock, then discounts are fine. And in some sort of transactional type businesses, then discounts are acceptable. But if you're anything other than that, I don't believe you should be discounting because basically you're devaluing your product. For me, buyers question why you weren't offering it at that price in the first place. Think of DFS. we've all seen that meme on the internet, that we all want to live long enough to see the end of the DFS sale. You know, nobody's ever going to buy a full price sofa from DFS. And indeed, in a different company I worked in, there was a retail manager that used to discount all the time, and actually over time, her sales actually stopped growing because people just started to wait for the discounts to come out. So she couldn't ever sell anything at full price. So her sales went down and her margins went down as well. Um, so really, like, what you need to think about in this scenario is if you lost all of your inbound tomorrow, how's that making you feel? If that's sending any sort of like butterflies in your stomach or giving you a bit of a gut punch, then that's telling you quite clearly that you're an order taking business, and therefore you've got a bit of a problem with sales. So here's how to like sort of sum it up. So none of these on their own look like a crisis when they're happening. So flat revenue, so turnover not increasing year on year, basically makes you feel that you've got a stable business. I'm not going backwards, so it's all good. In reality, if you're standing still, you're going backwards, and you probably have a problem with sales. Um, if you've got a pipeline that isn't telling you the truth and is padded out with either a few big deals or deals that are never going to close, then that's a little bit of an indicator for you as well. And if you're a business solely relying on inbound, if you're a B2C company, I get it. You can only really rely on inbound unless you can make B2B partnerships. But if you're a B2B company that's only relying on inbound, then frankly, you've got a bit of a sales problem. It may not be a problem right now, but I can guarantee you within the next 3 years, it's going to be a problem because that inbound will dry up. But overall, you can see why business owners fool themselves because all of these could all be fine. You're stable, your pipeline looks good, and you're getting a lot of inbound sales, so you don't have a sales problem. What I'm saying is that these as indicators can fool you, and you need to delve into each one of those to really assess whether you've got a problem. And this is what a lot of businesses miss. And unfortunately, they miss it. They look then at the lagging indicators, and unfortunately, then it's too late to diagnose the problem that you might have. So what I would do this week, if you kind of think, oh, I want to investigate this a little bit more, the first thing I would look at, so I would do a pipeline audit, but go to episode 1 because I tell you how to do a pipeline audit in that one. But for this week, what I would suggest is looking at the leading things. So what I would suggest is looking at new deals created in your pipeline, and just note down every single week, maybe for the next 4 weeks, how many new deals have been created, either by yourself or by your sales team. And I think probably what I would prefer is deals that have been created from outbound proactive activity. Now, if you'll be able to tell for your business if that's a really small number, a medium number, or a big number. But basically, if the number feels a bit too low to you, and I've worked with a business recently that hasn't opened any new deals in the last 4 weeks, so that tells you something. Then if that number feels low to you, then it may be, I'm not saying for definite, but it may be that you've maybe got a bit of a problem with sales that you might want to look into. Now, you don't have to fix that problem today. Give it a bit of time, to figure that out. But just start watching the number, because that will actually tell you what's going on in your sales sphere, if you like. And that number is actually what sees around corners and can let you know whether you've got a problem coming further down the line. So I'm Jerry. This has been the Sales Director Podcast. I look forward to seeing you next week. And in the meantime, if you've got any questions or feedbacks, feel free to send them in to me.